This is Access Door County, and I am your host, Victoria Cerinich. Today's guest is the Jacksonport Polar Bear Club, represented by Jarosh, J.R. Jarosh, John Jarosh, and of course, Sue Jarosh. Please tell us about the Jacksonport Polar Bear Club.
Well, it's certainly a club that's evolved to a point where we never really thought it would. It was a little idea that I had when I was 13 years old, which will be the 28th annual this year. So if you want to do the math, I just turned 41 and still seems like a pretty good idea. I was curious initially how many months of the year I could swim in Lake Michigan. We had a place in Jacksonport, and so we frequently were in the lake throughout the summer months. And after losing a bet and having to go in October, the December, when we first did it in December, didn't seem like that much of a stretch. And
so you moved it to January.
That's been part of the evolution of the club, but initially we were up around the holidays in late December, and it wasn't as bad as I thought the first year, and here we are.
You got kind of persuaded into it because it didn't seem so bad, but Joe was a big part of the bet, right?
Well, we did. When JR was, I think, in 6th grade, we had come up for the Sister Bay Fall Festival, and JR was thinking, this is an old man, I can beat him in a run. So they had a 5-mile run. So the bet was whoever lost had to go in the water. Now, obviously I won, and JR had to go in, and like he said, the rest is history. It's become now the largest polar bear club in the state of Wisconsin.
That's fantastic. And when did it start to add extra people? You know, at first it was just JR. Did you say, okay, John, you're my little brother, you're coming along with me? Or
I held his towel for the first number of years.
Oh,
I was
wouldn't go
the
in.
proud towel holder. No, I didn't decide to go in until a number of years later. Not a number, but my dad and I started going in the same year. I think this will be our 21st year going in. But JR went in the first 3 years by himself.
Just one person
just
on
himself.
his own.
And then the 4th year is when it tripled to 3.
Ooh.
And then it's kind of grown steadily, since then and up. I think our peak year was 2003, if I remember right, or maybe 2009. But it grew towards the end of the 1990s pretty quick.
Okay. And Sue, what did you think about your children going into the freezing water of Lake Michigan on January 1st?
I thought it was a challenge that they had made for themselves, and I thought it was fine.
Good.
And I've never gone in, and I never will, because someone has to be in charge.
Absolutely.
We have registration in the booth, and I get 10 volunteers to help me every year. It's a big crush at the end, and so I've never actually seen it.
So you'd be looking for volunteers for this year, or do you already have volunteers?
I have some volunteers that come every year, but my volunteers are morphing into polar bears.
Oh.
And this year, several of my ACE volunteers are actually planning to go in.
Okay.
So I would be open to have new volunteers give us a call.
And what number would they call you at?
Our home number is 920-823-2288.
And if they don't use that, can they use an email?
They could use our email, which is our last name, jarosh@dcwis.com.
And I was looking up all about the Jacksonport Polar Bear Club on your terrific website, and you do have a website that's just jacksonportpolarbearclub.com. So if people are looking for more information, they can go there. But today we're looking for more of the story. So we're up to 3 people in the water.
Sure. That first year, and now that we've had 27 years to look back, destiny was on our side, because the conditions since the first 3 years, I think maybe once have been that mild, but typically we've encountered, and it comes back, 1997, it was 100 feet of frozen ice and then a 3 to 4 foot drop off. So we had to bring a wooden ladder over, and the Jacksonport Fire Department had wooden boards barricading the ice chunks out. So there was a small alcove that we could jump into
Okay.
3 or 4 at a time and then climb out on the wooden ladder.
And then to climb out, because you couldn't get back out of the water
It was
with that kind of
too-
a drop off.
too much of a
ice.
drop.
Too much, or,
And JR said wooden ladder. We had started with a metal ladder,
And you
but people were sticking to it, so I had to run home across the street and get a wooden ladder so that we weren't having people stick their feet on it like the little boy touching the flagpole in the Christmas
sure.
story.
I bet if the fire department was curious about what you were doing, how did you approach them and what kind of support, or what did they say initially?
What are your early recollections of the fire department's involvement?
Early on, I believe that they decided to help us, and they used it as a fundraiser, and they provided hot coffee and chili. And
That's
they
terrific.
brought in a bullet heater to we put up tarps to heat the booth because, some years, like JR says, we have a gale blowing down there. So I think it started as a fundraiser for them, and they were there as a presence, and they realized how important they were becoming. And they've been fantastic.
And you have T-shirts, and when did you start thinking, well, when did you make it a club? First,
Sure.
it couldn't have been a club initially. It was the Jarosh family.
Well, we really need to give a lot of credit to Heidi Hodges now. She had written about it in the Advocate. She had been going in on her own, trying to get a club started. The previous year, I think she went in Bailey's Harbor and had a cameraman come up who went through the ice. So
On
that
purpose?
No, inadvertent member. And I'd been doing it in Jacksonport these few years, and so we connected then. It would have been early 1989, and said, why don't invited Heidi to come to Jacksonport. And really, that's when the one ridiculous teenager became part of a small ridiculous group.
Because she had access, she was writing her columns for the Advocate. So she started to give it press coverage, and from there, it just kind of snowballed every year.
The year
That's
after
it.
that, I think we had some nice notoriety as Larry McCarran, now the Packer radio announcer. He did a segment called Challenge the Rock at that time. He was the sportscaster for, I believe, Channel 5. So we challenged the Rock, and he came up in a very fashionable two-piece men's swimsuit from eras gone by, and he hated it.
And if I look at the records, that might have been one of, if not the coldest year temperature-wise that we ever had.
It was a cold year and windy, but that was, then it started, a little more press, and, the numbers went from 1 to 3 to 12 to 23, 52, and then really in the late 90s, we started to get into the several hundreds. And it's the thing where if 10 people go in, maybe 3 or 4 never want to do it again, but the 5 or 6 that do usually come back with others.
Okay.
And you've seen that exponential growth, now since the Millennium Swim, when people were probably just glad to be alive, we had our first jump where we really hit over 600. And
terrific.
since then, we've been in that 600 to 900 range.
Now, where on the shore do you go? Is it a secret spot, or is it a special set aside? Or?
Sure. We
It's hard to hide 800 people.
our main goal always is safety. So we typically try to pick a spot out where the ice conditions are favorable. And more often than not, it's been right off the public beach in Lakeside Park
Okay.
in Jacksonport.
Is there a signage so people that are going to try it for the first time can find you, or?
There's a sign there, but there's also the hundreds of people, so it's kind of like
It's kinda
watching,
like follow the
following
crowd.
the lemmings off the cliff, so to speak.
And I see you've got different hats. I've got my holiday hat on, and JR's got a hat on. Is wearing a special costume part of the event?
We encourage it with great vigor. As any event, you can do the bare minimum, or you can do whatever your creative mind leads you to. And we've found as the club has evolved, we've had more creative souls getting involved, and it's added a lot of fun. I remember the Grinch The
Yeah.
Grinch Stole Christmas.
Okay.
He was in a number of fun costumes and teams as well.
You have teams, so tell me about the teams. For instance, a local business or a church?
A couple of years ago, one of the girls' teams at Sevastopol, I don't know if it was their basketball team or their softball team, but I know they came in uniform and all went in kind of as a group. And we've seen that a couple of different times.
A number of workplaces have done things with their coworkers where they'll go in with a matching T-shirt or it's a really an odd but very unique team building exercise.
Do you have any events or gatherings before the actual plunge, or do you get together afterward? How do you build this group over the year, or you just get together sort of spontaneously on New Year's?
It's
Pretty much the four of us do all the organization. As you heard Sue say, she does the registration, John does a lot of the publicity, JR's out there, I'm the master of ceremonies, so pretty much that whole program with all those hundreds of swimmers and thousands of spectators falls on our shoulders. So there's a great sense of relief. As JR said, a successful swim is if the same number come out that went in.
Well, that would be good.
Yeah.
I think we can.
We strive for.
Yeah, you strive for that.
Yeah.
That's a goal.
Yeah.
Is it? You don't want to leave any behind or be looking for anybody. So
there's nice community involvement. We mentioned that the Jacksonport Fire Department has been involved with keeping it one of the safest polar bear swims in the country. It's they keep it very organized with safe ingress and egress. And there's also been some other community involvement as far as the fire department with a fundraiser, a pancake breakfast they've done in the past before. And I believe this year the Jacksonport Historical Society is going to be serving chili beforehand. So
before people
It's
go
kind
in,
of a-
kind of warm them up.
if you've
Hope
ever
it's
been
spicy.
outside of a game at Lambeau before tailgating before a winter game, there's kind of a buzz. The crowd's kind of huddled together. There's not a formal list of events leading up to it, but you see people in groups. Some people have a little tent or a cooler of warm water. We do encourage you to do the swim sober. Not all clubs around the country do that, but it's not just that it's a family-friendly venue and event, but for the safety's sake of it.
For health reasons. And I went to your website because I wanted to know as much about your Polar Bear Club and the plunge as I could. And I saw you had helpful tips, starting with footwear. And can you go through some of them? You can explain to me why protective footwear. What's the problem here? Don't wear your good boots, I guess.
Sure. I mean, the footwear has been something, like many of these helpful tips, after 27 tries, you learn what works and what doesn't work and what you do differently. So if you are interested in doing it, going on the website and visiting the helpful tips section, all the mistakes we've made over the years, you can figure them out right the first time. The footwear is a simple one. Warm foot and cold ice. It's kind of like the double dog dare on the flagpole.
Okay, your feet will
Protecting
stick.
your feet,
Okay.
and not just the sticking, but when they get very cold from being in 32-degree water, they're less pliable.
Oh.
And so getting a cut on the ice can happen a lot easier with a brittle skin than
Okay.
with skin even just protected with a wet aqua sock or shoe. So that's just a safety.
Right, and another one I saw for about going in, it said if you wear glasses, obtain an athletic strap, something like an athlete would wear. Have you had to look for a lot of glasses your first couple times around?
You don't spend a whole lot of time looking.
Oh, okay, keep your insurance policy up to date.
I remember particularly in 1997 when we had to jump in. People would just get caught up in the moment and forget, and they'd come up without their glasses. And no matter how hardy you are, fishing around in 3 feet of ice water is not an easy thing to do.
Okay, so you might have to donate them if you don't.
Come back in March, look
Yeah.
on the beach,
Yeah.
you might find them.
Might
But
find them.
better off just to wear a glasses strap in.
Now, when you get to the park, there's something about setting up camp. Now, it sounds, and Joe, you may have more with the logistics, or Sue, a lot of people there. You've got two kinds, the people that are going to swim and the people that are going to watch the people that are going to plunge. What can
And
you
the
tell me about
firemen,
the camp?
as has been mentioned earlier, the firemen are such an integral part of our swim. We couldn't do it without them. First of all, because of the safety factor, they are in the water. There's 4 or 5 firemen in the water making a semicircle about waist deep, wearing special cold water suits.
Oh, okay.
No one is allowed to go past them, so we have 6 people in the water. They also have EMTs there, we have an ambulance running for warmth and so on. So safety, as JR mentioned, is premier. But the fire department gets down there at 8 o'clock and we meet them down there, and then we make a determination where is the safest entry point. And then the fire department will spend several hours preparing that entry point, sometimes using chainsaws, sometimes using axes, shovels, to make sure it's safe to go in.
Okay.
And then they also put pound stakes in and use yellow caution tape that separates the swimmers from the spectators. Because the swimmers need an area to put their towels, or in some cases, put coolers full of warm water that they stand in when the swim is done. And so the fire department is very integral in terms of separating swimmers from non-swimmers.
Okay, so John, just asking you more about an individual swimmer. So say you're gonna go in, you got your special shoes, you put your glasses in the car. What are you wearing? And what do you do before you get in?
Well, a couple of years ago, we added music down on the beach, which was a
Oh.
wonderful addition. We have loud entertainment there to help us with some music. So it's kind of a fun, festive atmosphere down on the beach. And, the half hour, 40 minutes or so leading up to the swim. And so music is playing. Everybody's just kind of excited, getting ready for the swim. My dad does announcements every so often to keep people up to date on, X number of minutes until the swim. The temperature of the air is this, the water temperature is that. And people just kind of will set up their little spot and kind of get ready and just walk around and talk to one another, show off their costumes if they've got one on. And as we get close to the actual swim itself, people will start to get undressed if they have a costume or if they're just wearing a suit or whatever, get their aqua socks on. And then everybody kind of goes down and sort of gathers along the edge of the shore for the countdown at 10 seconds.
Okay. So let me ask about, you put a towel out, and is somebody with you at that spot, or only the people that are going in the water are at that spot?
Ideally, we try and encourage only swimmers to be
With the towel.
With the towel,
In the
just
swim.
because there's 600, 700, 800 swimmers in
Lot
a
of
spot, and it's usually pretty cramped quarters. And if there was 2 or 3 people holding towels with every swimmer, there wouldn't be enough room.
Really? So you have a towel, you maybe have a cooler with hot water, and what you would disrobe whatever your outer clothing is, and leave that on your towel, and then wait for the countdown from Joe,
Yeah.
and follow JR, and wish they were Sue, and then you're in the water. What happens to you?
It's
It
every
happens
person
pretty
for themselves.
fast. It happens fast. Some people hit the water, turn around, and run back.
Do you have to sink your head in?
You don't have to.
Okay.
I mean, you're right there.
You're right there, why
You know?
not? Oh, sure.
May as
You know,
well.
our unofficial, making it an official swim, we feel like submersion.
Is part of the deal, okay.
Wet hair is a real badge of honor as you
Oh,
emerge from
Yeah,
the lake.
icicle hair.
Right.
Yeah, there you
And that
go.
will happen.
And I think if you are going to be doing it, you mentioned what to wear. If you wear warm clothes down there, say you get there at 10:30, you sign up, you get your certificate, maybe you buy a shirt or a hat. I'd have warm clothes on, but maybe like a robe or something loose that you could get into maybe 4 or 5 minutes beforehand. So you're not trying to strip out of jeans and
Ah, okay.
so maybe if you have a support group on the beach behind the swimmers only line, they could hold your jeans or your harder to get out of clothes. Wear a robe down, something, maybe even just drape a blanket over you
Okay.
for the couple minutes lead up. At 1 minute to go, we do the House of Pain Jump Around song, made
Oh.
famous at the start of the 4th quarter. So then you're at a minute to go, you kind of do your jump around, you get the blood pumping, and then you can, at 10 or 15 seconds, drop your towel. Everybody kind of squeezes together for warmth and
You
blocking
want to be
the
in the
wind.
middle.
And then it's the cheapest, safest adrenaline rush you'll get when that
Oh,
crowd
I
starts
love
the 10-second countdown. and the newbies are nervous, and everybody's just excited, and then we begin our assault on the lake. And the one thing I say that I remind myself of every year is savor that moment. It's so short. People say, "Oh, I don't even remember." Go in, dive under, give a few high fives, just look at the shore, because most people will never ever see that mass of people. It's just such a unique perspective on life and the start of the year. Yeah. So savor it, then get the heck out, dry off.
And you run back to maybe that loose towel or blanket that you left on your back at the shore on your little spot.
Sure, and that's where if you're going with a group of friends, a cooler of warm water. We've seen the people make the mistake of piping hot water. Oh, yeah. So then you're freezing, but you can't get in the water because it's too hot. So nice tepid warm water, that makes a world of difference. You can step into that, takes the chill off of your feet. You can towel off, take turns getting in and out while you get maybe some loose boots or some loose fitting socks that you can get on, and then make your way back, whether that be to your car, to JJ's, to Mike's, over to the parade.
So there might be plunge activities.
Yeah, it's while the activity on the shore is limited and clears out by 12:15, the merriment around town continues long into the afternoon hours.
Oh, that's terrific. So when you get there, you can get a T-shirt and a hat, I heard you mention, and that helps support the volunteer fire department in Jacksonport?
It does. The swim, it's a nonprofit agency. We cover our costs of keeping the club viable. We make a donation to the fire department, and then we save a little money to invest for the next year's merchandising. People want to remember they did it. In fact, our shirt design is a little different this year. This year it says, "I took the plunge on New Year's Day." And then our logo with the shivering bear and the couple swimmers jumping in. And then a few years ago we did this style cap with the embroidered logo. And we've had a number of requests for another hat. Mom, would you like to?
Sure. This is our hat this year. And this has the logo on it. And this is a Thinsulate cap. It's very well done. And we're very pleased with it. And it's one size fits all, so it's
you grab really that as soon as you get out of the water and put it on that icicle hair.
Yes.
Not only warm, but very New Year's Day chic.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the colors, they coordinated the blue colors, I see.
It goes with the tones that you'll see in your arms and legs after you emerge from the lake.
There is no cost to do the swim. The swim is free. The only thing we ask is for people to sign a registration slip. And other than that, there is no expense. And also, we have worked with, and Sue can talk about that, the Feed My People.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
We wanted to make a good, positive event for a local group, so we contacted the Clothe and Feed My People a number of years ago. And this is probably 10 years running now. People are asked to bring a food item. And so Feed My People has a van there, and they're always thrilled with the amount of food that they collect. And on New Year's Day, their pantry is empty, after the holidays.
After the holidays.
And people, if they don't bring a food item, some people make a donation. And so that's our main goal is to collect food for the food pantry, and it's been very successful.
And so that's generally canned goods, non-perishable items, even though it is probably below freezing and everything would keep. It's best not to do anything that would have a shelf life that's very brief. So what you'd ask your prospective swimmers or plungers is to make sure they prepare their own clothing properly and they think through a little bit of their plan for going in the water and coming out safely. But since there's no charge, it would be a really nice gesture to start the new year with a donation of food to the food pantry. And if they want a souvenir and they want to support the club, because the club has no dues, it's really the four of you that are the club that are organizing it. And they can buy a T-shirt or a hat, and part of that will help for expenses for that year and then the next year.
And then any other money we have left over is we donate to the Jacksonport Fire Department for their continued help and efforts in making the swim as safe as it is. 27 years, we've not had any problems.
That's Absolutely terrific. So tell me, how does the officership work of the 4-person Polar Bear Club that organizes an activity for close to, with guests, probably 2,000 people?
Well, I think by default I was voted president.
Oh, you didn't
Because
run fast enough.
I've been freezing the longest.
Okay.
John is the VP, and then the treasurer secretary duties are shared. We really, those are just titles. It's a team effort. It's a fun family effort, and our wives and children, and I have 7-year-old girls, and they're pondering, can I go in? Do I want to go in? And and that addresses the point about having young people do it. And parents, know your children, know their limits. If they freak out in August, it's probably not a good idea trying to get them in the lake in January.
Right.
If they seem pretty hardy, what I've told my girls is, if you want to go and do a practice swim with no one else there, go in and jump in sometime in December, and that seems okay, then we'll try it
Right,
New Year's Day.
but with you and Mom
Of course,
and Dad, and
with-
setting up the situation so they know they'd be safe going in and safe coming out. Yeah, not just go
No.
take a little run on your own.
No, absolutely not. Don't get any ideas, girls.
We've had kids as young as 6. We've had folks in their 80s go in. And as I'm up on the ladder and I'm being MC, I'm noticing that over the last few years, it's almost gotten to the point now where it's 50-50 men and women. Initially, it was primarily just the guys going in, but over the last few years, it's evolved into pretty much a shared type experience. And it's almost become a rite of passage for kids who see their big brother or sister go in. Mom and dad says, when you get to be a certain age, if you want to do it, you can do it, and things like that. And it's interesting when we have people turn in their registration sheets. Sue and I do the tally after the swim is done. And last year, we had folks from 25 different states sign up and 3 foreign countries, which attests to the fact that it is the most popular polar bear swim in the state of Wisconsin. In fact, we've even gotten emails, and I'll let JR or John expound on that. We've gotten emails from polar bear clubs in Moscow, Russia, Gdansk, Poland, and in fact, the Polish polar bears we had a very interesting connection with, and I'll have JR share that with you.
Well, why don't you lead it up, Mom, with your communications with Piotr?
I got an email from Piotr Wozniak, who lives in Gdansk, Poland, probably 10 years ago. And we would go back and forth and share pictures, and we sent them our shirts, and they sent us their shirts in Polish. And it turns out that he is a doctor, and he did an internship at the University of Michigan. And he called me and said, well, I'm in the neighborhood and I'd like to come and go in with you. Well, I said, you realize that's at least an 8-hour drive. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
Michigan's not as close as
right.
people think.
We weren't sure he understood how far. Well, he came and brought a comrade with him, and they actually went in, and they loved it here because we have a shoreline and they could walk in. Where they go at the end of a pier, they cut in a hole, and they're in.
Oh,
So they
yeah.
thought our entry was just fabulous. And they stayed for a day, and we just had a wonderful exchange with them.
Did they take in some of the après plunge activities at
Well-
one of the local restaurants? Or?
They were here in, was it March?
was March.
They weren't
Oh,
able
okay.
to
They
be
weren't
here
able-
New Year's Day,
Yeah.
so we had
So
kind
you
of
got
an
to do it
impromptu
again.
international polar bear
Yeah.
meeting, and they had some neat traditions. They they just stripped down to their underwear beforehand and run for a few minutes to warm up,
Oh.
which was fun. If you were driving through Jacksonport that day in March a few years back and you saw a few guys in their underwear,
Running
that
back
was
and
us.
forth along the beach there.
And then they went in
Okay.
and, it was just really an interesting experience. Never would we ever think we'd be doing a swim with
Yeah.
some really nice Polish guys.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
So they appreciated it.
They appreciate it. The club has offered some really unique opportunities that, again, we would have never dreamed up. One was when I got a phone call soon after caller ID came into being, and it was 20th Century Fox, and I thought, well, that's unusual. And I answered, and her name was Carol, and she was a publicist for Fox, for 20th Century Fox, and Ice Age, the first Ice Age, was just about to come out. and she had seen our
Animated film.
the animated film, and she'd seen the website and wondered if our club could be part of their premiere.
Oh, gosh.
And if we could get 50 or so club members, they would pay to have a charter bus to get us to the Mall of America, and it was an outdoor premiere, and we did. It was quite a bit of fun. They had ice blocks for us to sit on,
Oh, lovely.
and Entertainment Tonight and those type of shows were there, and it was fun. In fact, the picture of my mom and dad sitting in their swimsuits with John Leguizamo, the actor and the voice of the sloth, I believe. It was a picture that I won't soon forget.
Oh, I think not. So, looking at this coming January 1st, what is it you would like to tell people to think about if they want to join you? What should they do first?
Find a friend so they won't talk themselves out of it.
Okay, there's a start.
Beyond that, visit our website. It's fun to see. It'll give you a sense, is this something for me or not? If you're kind of a thrill seeker, it's close to home, it's relatively safe, and it is so much fun.
Okay.
So visit the website, look at the helpful hints.
There's also the tips and forms page that people will see on the site. There's the waiver release agreement that if you'd like to, you can download that as a
I think
PDF
I've
file.
got one here.
And
Yeah.
and you can sign that and have that all ready to go. So all you have to do the day of the swim is literally walk up and hand it at the registration
So you bring
area.
this with you.
Yep. You don't have to do that. You can fill one out the day of the swim right at Lakeside
Oh,
Park.
okay.
But if you want to save a little time and maybe fill it out in a little bit warmer climate, fill it out at home and you can bring that in.
Okay. And bring a can of food,
Yep.
and bring a towel, and bring a possibly a cooler of medium warm water. Possibly get your t-shirt and your hat first, so you've got extra dry clothes to put on when you get out.
Yeah. And be prepared to have a heck of a good time.
Heck of a good time. Well, I'm prepared to have a heck of a good time because I'm going to do this.
Hey!
Good for you.
That's why I had one printed out, because I thought I can fill this one out. And that is our program for today. We are talking with the Jacksonport Polar Bear Club about the Jacksonport Plunge on January 1st, 2014. I am your host, Victoria Cerinich. Thank you very much for watching.
See you on the ice.
Love to see you New Year's Day at noon.